Well, when it comes to the control composition clause, I think that's one of the more stranger cross sections or intersections of the record side of the business with the publishing side of the business. I mean, basically, you have two copyrights that are involved in the record business. One is in the sound recording, and the entire record business is built on the buying and selling of that sound recording copyright. And then the song, the underlying lyrics and melody that's sung onto the record or played onto the record is another copyright. And that copyright, the whole music publishing business is built on the buying and selling of that copyright. And in record deals, there's a provision frequently that basically says, you're our artist. We're going to pay you a royalty as an artist, as a singer, as a player, as a band. But to the extent that the law requires us to pay the songwriters a mechanical royalty, which right now under the law in 2007 is 9.1 cents per song per record sold, you're going to agree that any song that you control, you're going to give us a better rate, because there's no, I mean, that's the set rate, but you can contract around it. Now again, there's an argument to be made that, hey, there's a minimum wage too. How do we contract around it? Now, people do, they call it internships, and you work for free. But I don't think you could really say, the minimum wage is $10 an hour, but you're going to be in the entertainment business, so you're going to agree to take $7. But with the control competition clause, that's in essence what it says. We know the statutory rate is currently 9.1 cents per song per record sold, but because we're paying you an artist royalty, you're going to agree to give it to us for a reduced rate, which frequently starts out by being a 3/4 rate. So we're going to give you 75% of the rate for starters. And then frequently it also has a cap. So it says we're going to give you 3/4 rate, and we're not going to pay a total of more than 10 songs on an album. So even if you put 20 songs on your album, we're only paying 10 times 3/4 of 9.1 cents. So I can't do all the math in my head, but essentially there's a cap on how much we, the record label, are going to pay for songs total. And the really insidious thing besides the fact that you as a songwriter are reducing the value of your record labels, reducing the value of what you can make from your publishing, at least on the records they sell with your songs. If the law says there's a statutory rate and the copyright powers that be say the rate is now 9.1 cents, why is it that unlike a minimum wage, why is it, or is it legal for the record label to negotiate you to agree to take a lower price? Again, and it's a fight between copyright law and contract law. And it hasn't really been fought much. I think the times when it's been brought up, the labels usually make a deal. It's usually brought up in the context of a renegotiation. So an artist may sue its record label, and one of the claims is that you're underpaying me from my control composition clause and that invalid provision of the contract. And the label renegotiates and they settle the case so it never becomes decided by a court.
Sometimes getting a record deal is the worst thing that ever happened to a band. Many bands fail simply because they get a record deal. They might have made it if it weren't for the record deal. A band ought to sit back and think long and hard about, do they really want a record deal? These days, there are a lot of people who turn them down, and turn them down intentionally. They run the numbers, and it turns out that you can do the math. Another thing that's a negative side of a record company deal that most bands don't really sort of keep in mind, and that is the record company only has X amount of energy that they can expend promoting their artist. And sometimes the biggest single challenge that an artist has is just getting the attention of the record company. They can only promote a handful of artists at one time. They can only go to radio programmers and pitch so many people. They can't sit there and pitch 25 or 30 different artists. And so sometimes the biggest challenge that the artist has is getting the attention of the record label inside the record label. And so just because you got a record label deal doesn't mean that you're going to get attention. And the record labels are smart. They go to where there's the most high likelihood of success. And so if the record company's got a choice between promoting U2's new album and promoting your first album, well, guess which one's going to get the attention? Because you know, anybody could promote U2's album. They're like falling off a log. They get them on Name Your Favorite program. They get them on television. They get them on anywhere they want them. They get them. They get them on newspapers, whatever. But if you're an unknown band and you're a brand new band, you know, what motivation do they have to do that? So it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of money, takes a lot of energy, and the payoff, the likelihood, the risk of that's of success in that's pretty low. And so sometimes getting a record label deal is the kiss of death for a band, because they get at a record label, but the record label doesn't promote them. They can't. They don't have the resources that it takes to promote them. So my first counsel to an independent artist would be to think long and hard about whether you really want a record label deal or not, especially these days. These days, it's tough. Another thing that that an artist better look over is that contract, and you better read that contract very carefully. And you better not have your family lawyer that drew up your grandparents' will read that contract. You have better had somebody who's an entertainment attorney that does that specifically read over that contract. But can you start looking at what you're being charged for? You look at how much you're being charged for doing that, and then you start running the numbers to see how many of these things you're going to have to sell before you break even. You might want to walk away from it.
Well, personally, I believe that artists should control their own releases. The technology is available now, and the distribution is available online and through various other sources. Personally, I feel that some artists should avoid working with major labels. It's difficult, you know, it's really a decision that each individual band needs to make, and it's obviously based on their needs and desires. A lot of people would like to go the major route and get the support and the money and to be able to tour and do larger shows and arenas. But really, I think it's about artists and bands gauging exactly where they'd like to go with their music. So I don't know. I don't really have a personal feeling. I don't think, you know, the machine is the beast, so to speak. It doesn't have to be. But I think that once you start accepting a lot of cash, you know, you have to be careful, because it can definitely compromise your vision, your integrity. That's my only concern.
It's pretty simple, and I try and educate my clients, and I'm going to sound really nerdy by saying this. I try and get my clients to read about business, at least to tell them about this book that everyone loves, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a great, simple thing for people to read. And it's like, really the way it is that the band are the board of directors, or the band are the co-CEOs of their corporation. The manager is the president. And then all the people, the lawyer, the publicist, the record label, the road manager, the accountant, are the division heads. And you have to ask your clients, what do you want out of your business? If you want to just play in a basement and have your friends like you, that's great. You don't need a manager, you don't need an agent, you can just do that. If you want to foist yourself upon the world, there are a number of different levels of record labels that can help you. Record labels are just marketing companies. And everybody gets very emotional about it, and they should, because it's a big thing. But really, record companies are just marketing companies, right? They get the rights to your product, and they spend X amount of money to market your record, and they make a markup on it, or a profit, and they pay you what ends up being a very small royalty rate for the trouble. I try to tell my clients why they want to be on a major, why they want to be on an independent, why they may want to, in fact, develop their music in a recorded form completely offline before they even get to a label. It's about decisions, and it's about educating your clients about what the options are. Everybody wants to be on Warner Brothers Records or Interscope or Universal or whatever, right? Because it's glamorous, it's sexy, there's the promise of big money and hot chicks and fancy houses. Of course, we all know that that's not a reality. There's a lot of work to be paid, and by the time the money ends up in the artist's hands, it's usually a much more meager sum than it was when it was on the contract being negotiated by the lawyer. I try to empower my clients with knowledge so that they stay in a powerful position in their own careers, and so they don't feel like they're under the thumb of the man. I don't know about not signing with a label, because then as a manager you take on too much responsibility. That it's interesting, because I'm a manager who owns a label, but I try to not manage artists on my label, and I try to make sure that people are hired to do the job that they specialize in. For instance, I don't try and get people publicity. I try and direct my publicists to get publicity for my artists. Because when you cross those boundaries, you open yourself up to getting a foot in your ass from your clients. And B, you open yourself up to handling things the wrong way. You know, I don't expect my publicists to put together a tour budget. I don't expect my publicists to go and sit down with the band and talk to them about their overall strategy for 2 years for their career. I expect myself to do that. So I try and have very simple boundaries with my team for an artist, and I like to have them do their job. I think that just thinking that every band needs to be on a major label is a misnomer. It's a really, really bad thing to think. First of all, bands get swallowed up on major labels, and second of all, that's fool's gold. If you waste 3 years of a band's life trying to sign to a major label and you don't put out any music into the world, what service are you doing for them? I believe bands need to put out music as soon as possible and grow in public.
If you come into the music business and say you get next to a guy like Leo or like Def Jam or whatever like that, and say the deal, he's jerking you pretty bad. So when he reads your book, he's like, hey, I'm supposed to get this, this, and this. I said, but sometimes you could just throw the rules out. And if your gut says, hey, I could blow up with this guy, go ahead and sign the deal. Now, here's part 2 to that chapter. After you blow up, take the contract, go to the Leo's office, get a match, and burn it. After you sell 5 albums, say, hey, Leo, watch this. This is our contract. Shh, new deal. My philosophy is if you have a gut reaction and you have a gut thing like this is the right label I'm supposed to be with, fuck it. Against all odds, take the deal. Take the deal. And then after you take the deal, know you have to sell records or you're going to get fucking jerked. But you know what? We all get jerked. Even when it's a great deal in the beginning. If you sell records, you're going to renegotiate that great deal. So who cares? Just get in with the right people that you think is going to blow you up and is going to be the thing. Forget that deal. And then once you get in and have the signed contract, work your ass off. Then after you work your ass off and you get up and you're this big success, walk into the thing after you sold your millions of copies and say, hey, you guys know you're going to have to give me a new deal here, right? Guess what? They're all going to say, yeah, we know. And they're going to sit on at the table and you negotiate a new deal. Because they want another record and they know they jerked you. They know they jerked you. So the new deal, they're going to still jerk you. How about this? They're going to still jerk you, but you'll make a lot more money. Then if you sell some more records again, guess what? New deal again. We're going to keep tweaking this up till it's right.